everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Future of the Sustainable Development Goals panel. This is one of the most interesting panels that we have because every year it is probably one of the most highly attended and watched, so no pressure to any of you. But we are really excited because you are going to hear from the next generation of leaders, the United Nations, for member states, and for all the other organizations that drive the successful completion of these global goals. I want to thank Ideagen for allowing us this opportunity and this platform. I've been working with Ideagen for about 10 years now, and it's great to see a lot of familiar faces in the room. Some of the folks that have come on board prior to my time, and there are plenty that I brought in and haven't left because they see the value and the potential and the future impact that we can have together. And Ideagen is about change. It's about change for good, and it's about collaboration and engagement. And so I think you're going to hear a lot about that today from our panel. I'm going to let each of our guests introduce themselves. And as they introduce themselves, I'm actually also going to ask them to go ahead and start answering some questions. So the first thing that I'll ask, and I'm going to start with the youth, and then I'll move on to the adults. First, if you could please introduce yourself to the audience. I'd like you to also share your perspective about the understanding and knowledge of the Sustainable Development Goals with your peers. You know, what do you see happening today? Do they understand them? What's going on in the world? The second thing that I'd like you to think about and be ready to answer is, and why do you believe that the Sustainable Development Goals may or may not be receiving enough mainstream attention out in the world today? Okay, so we'll start there. And for the adults, also share a little bit about yourselves and what you do. And Sheryl, I'd like you to share a little bit more about your fearless female leadership journey. And for Terry, I would love for you to share a little bit more about the background that you've worked on around education and why the Sustainable Development Goals are so important, and your perspective on what you're seeing out in the world today, okay? So why don't I start with, they don't know who I'm going to start with, by the way. Let's start with Taylor.
Hi, my name is Taylor Smith, and I've been a student ambassador for Ideagen since I was 10 years old when I first spoke at the UN headquarters ECOSOC about the youth's involvement in the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as women in power and how we can empower more women to step up and lead the countries. I am also a member of Girls Who Code and Model United Nations, and I want to bring coding and engineering into scientific research while opening a space for other young women to enjoy similar passions. I believe that youth awareness on the Sustainable Development Goals is mixed. Among certain groups of young people, like in urban centers such as New York, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and London, there are high levels of awareness. Over the past few years, there have been many youth-led initiatives, educational programs, and organizations actively raising awareness of the global goals. Social media and digital platforms play a significant role in spreading awareness of the global goals among youth. Hashtags, challenges, calls for code, hackathons, and online content related to the global goals have been used to engage young people. An example of this is the Arab Spring, which was born on digital platforms and serves as a model of how technology can mobilize youth and advocate for democratic change while addressing inequality issues. In some countries, incorporation of the Sustainable Development Goals into school curricula and education material has contributed to a higher level of understanding among youth. In other countries, access is far more restricted. In less developed regions and areas with limited access to education and information, awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals is limited. Information gaps and language barriers can impact awareness among youth and across developed, developing, and emerging countries. Efforts are ongoing to improve youth awareness and understanding of the global goals through education, advocacy, and digital resources. However, the effectiveness of these initiatives may vary. Still, it is important to work to ensure that all youth have access to the information and tools to empower us on our journey on achieving these goals. Now, I believe that while the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have gained significant attention and support in public and private sector organizations around the world, there are still several reasons why they may not have received the mainstream attention that is needed to achieve them. First is lack of awareness. Many people, especially in certain regions that don't elevate the message, are still not aware of the global goals' significance. Raising awareness of these global goals is continuing to remain a challenge. Complexity. There are 17 global goals and 169 targets. Imagine that for a second. If you think that's hard to comprehend, imagine how hard it is for a teenager. Complexity can be overwhelming and make it difficult for the general public to understand and engage with the goals. Short-term focus. More people, organizations, and governments tend to prioritize short-term goals and issues, while the Sustainable Development Goals are long-term objectives with a 2030 deadline. Sustainable resources. Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals requires substantial financial and human resources. Funding gaps and resource constraints can limit the scope of the Global Goals initiative. Finally, global economic and politically driven dynamics. Complex global economic and political dynamics, including conflicts and trade disputes, can divert attention away from resources that are needed for global goal-related efforts. In some countries, the global goals have become entangled with partisan politics, which can hinder support and cooperation. Despite these challenges, there are numerous organizations, governments, and advocates, such as Ideagen, that work tirelessly on promoting the global goals and driving progress towards achieving them. As awareness and understanding of the goals continues to grow, they will receive more mainstream attention and support in the future. But it is going to take a significant amount of work considering the diverse opinions and policies of different regions.
Thank you, Taylor. Ella, could you share a little bit about yourself and your perspective on those 3 points?
Well, my name is Ella Solomon, and I have interests in education and medicine, and I am a sophomore in high school based in Fairfax, Virginia. As a high school student, I would categorize the understanding and knowledge of the 17 UN SDGs amongst my peers as varied. The level of understanding often depends on factors such as education, educational background, exposure to global issues, and personal interests of individual students. Encouraging more comprehensive and accessible education about the UN SDGs in schools and creating opportunities for students to engage with these goals is crucial. This vastly improves their understanding and will foster a generation of informed global citizens committed to sustainable development. I also believe that the lack of awareness and education about the UN SDGs is a significant contributing factor. Many people may have not been exposed to comprehensive information about the SDGs and their relevance to daily lives. Without sufficient education and awareness campaigns, it becomes difficult for the goals to gain the attention they deserve. The media also plays a crucial role. Media attention tends to focus more on events and entertainment, leaving limited space for in-depth discussions on sustainable development and the SDGs.
Thank you, Ella. George, you want to share your perspective, just a little bit about yourself, what you see with your peers, and then mainstream attention?
Hello, everyone. I am George Sifakis II. I go to Gonzaga College High School in Washington, D.C. And I am passionate about the 17 goals, starting at a young age and connecting them to issues in our community is a powerful way to make them relevant, especially to the youth. Eradicating hunger, because I see firsthand in the suffering and need in D.C., the world's global capital. A good example is the Father McKenna shelter at Gonzaga College High School. To answer the question, I believe that there are just so many issues across the world and so many distractions for everyone, especially with social media today. And it's hard to have any issue get lots of attention for a long period of time.
That's great. Thank you all for your feedback. That was very profound. You gave us a lot to think about. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sheryl and then Terry to share a little bit more about their background and experience and maybe some perspective on some of what you just heard.
Thanks so much, Kim. It's great to be here. My name is Sheryl Kline. I'm the CEO and founder of the Zone Lab. And my background is applied sports psychology. Worked 20 years with world-class athletes, Olympians, and over the last 8 years or so, my focus has been high performance and mental toughness for women in the workplace. And so, you know, before I talk a little bit about the Fearless Female Leadership Journey, I want us all to consider that at around 50,000 BCE, that women were worshipped as goddesses, And this went on for tens of thousands of years. And this was until till they were really subjugated, and that came to an end. And they were then looked at, it was really made taboo and looked at as evil, and all of these deities were really made so they couldn't be worshipped anymore. And so somewhere along the line, or whatever you choose to believe, but it's not that I feel that it's important to, topple the patriarchy, but that it does need to be balanced. And the powers that be, whether it's religious or not religious or spiritual or what have you, is that women are meant to be in leadership. And if we look at the state of affairs that we are in our cultures, our companies, the economy, and the global turmoil that's going on right now, that it's dire now more than ever that women return to power and help balance out the patriarchy and work with men to help right the ship. So the Fearless Female Leadership Journey is a way, I was listening to Gretchen O'Hara earlier and think about how to scale our impact. It's a way for me to pull back the curtain with my executive coaching, working with some of the most prolific and influential female leaders in the country, some of who are here today, and to be able to scale this impact and help these leaders help their teams to have an impact for female leaders, and especially those who are further marginalized within our gender, and as well as university students and our future leaders of today.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terry Nealon. I'm the CEO of a company called Learning Without Tears. I've spent the last 18 or 19 years in the business of education. I started in software, and then I decided I wasn't having the impact that I wanted to have in the world. So I left in 2005 and spent the full year in the Eastern Cape and Southern Africa, really working in community development through sport coaches, working in 4 schools, and HIV awareness program that we actually educated the communities through the programs of sport and how they would live, not just prevent the disease. So when I came back and got involved in education, it was an opportunity to really look at a way that I could do well by doing good, applying my background in business development and corporate development, and we built businesses that at one point were about 120 countries. I had my own startup after that, and the reason I set up the startup is I saw solutions were failing, and they're still failing. And the solution that I put together was really looking at how do you really understand the needs of every individual student at scale. And if you go back to 1984, Benjamin Bloom had published a report about the one-to-one instruction. I mean, it's the best way to learn, we know that. And very importantly, that study was done on human beings teaching human beings, not machines teaching human beings. That's an interesting angle when you look at it from that perspective. So over the last 18 years, what I've been looking at is how to build solutions that will really deal with a major problem. And a major problem that is a problem for so long can very often go forgotten as a crisis. And we are in a crisis. So when you think about this 4th goal of education, if we keep going where we're going, 84 million kids are going to be out of school. 300 million, probably under the age of about 10, won't have the numeracy and literacy skills to succeed in the world. Now, even if you take out numeracy, because you can't do numeracy if you don't have literacy, this is a major, major problem. And it's not just a major problem in developing countries. It's certainly heightened in sub-Saharan Africa and places, as you go further south, different parts of Asia. It is a major, major problem. But it's a problem all over the place. And a lot of our business that we service now is in the United States. In the United States, I would argue, and there's certainly an argument against this, but I'm not sure there's been a tougher time to be an educator in the United States, right? Best funded education market in the world by some distance. And they're dealing with all these other issues, the social issues, the safety and security issues, the issues around how do I get on with the job of teaching, the administration overhead. They're leaving the profession in droves. Leadership is walking out the door. The principals at something over 40% are saying, I want out. Our superintendent time of in their roles is about 2.5 years. So you're not going to take a risk. You're not going to innovate on the basis that you probably won't be in the role if it doesn't work, right? So there's a fear that's built into the system. And it's, again, I'm picking the US as an example, but thinking about it globally, there is an enormous problem right now. And I don't want to put a dampener on everything. There are solutions. There are things that we're going to talk about in this session, because I'm actually very optimistic about where we can go from here, because we can't go any further. It's that serious.
Thank you, Terry. That was a really powerful messaging. I'd like to turn it back over to our youth and student panel here and ask specifically what the Sustainable Development Goals mean to you. And in that context, what is one goal in particular that stands out that you're most passionate about, and how you think that we all should be thinking about it differently? So Ella, do you want to start?
Well, to me, the UN SDG serves as a roadmap for a better future. They provide a foundation that encourages us to think holistically about the interconnectedness of social, economic, and environmental issues. The SDGs remind us that we need to work together across borders and sectors to achieve sustainable development and create a more equitable and prosperous future. There's one goal among the 17 UN SDGs that deeply resonates with me. Goal number 4, quality education. Personally, I believe that education is not only about acquiring knowledge, but also about developing essential life skills and fostering such values as empathy, inclusivity, and environmental consciousness. Quality education should be accessible, inclusive, and equitable, ensuring that every child has the opportunity to receive an education that nurtures their talents and prepares them for the challenges of the future. For the future generation, education can open doors, broaden perspectives, and empower individuals to overcome obstacles and create positive change. It equips us with knowledge, critical thinking skills, and the ability to contribute meaningfully to society.
Thank you, Ella. That's really powerful. George, do you want to share your perspective?
Of course. Well, as a student at Gonzaga College High School, I understand the importance of the global goals, and also believe that many of my peers do as well. And I'd like to mention that we're the only high school in the nation with a homeless shelter operating on our campus. And we have a first-hand opportunity to volunteer and assist with operations in the shelter that provides food and shelter, and career services to these men experiencing homelessness. Eradicating poverty and hunger, which are the 2 of 17 goals, are very important, and at Gonzaga we see that firsthand at the Father McCann Center.
Thank you, George. I love that you don't have the same goals. So that's fantastic. Taylor, do you want to share yours?
Well, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are important to me as a young woman for so many reasons. I would be up here all day if I had to explain them all. But by understanding and engaging with the global goals, I become an advocate for issues that matter to me. A couple goals that are very important to me are gender equality, which emphasizes gender equality and women's empowerment, and means addressing issues such as gender-based discrimination, violence, and inequalities. Quality education, which aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education for all, and is crucial for a young person's growth and development, especially for young women like me in a primary male-led society. Health and well-being is also important to me because it focuses on good health and well-being services for all, which includes sexual and reproductive health services. This ensures that you have access to essential health care and can make informed decisions about your body and your health, which is vital for all young women. Climate action, Goal 13, is also important because climate change is a global issue that significantly impacts my generation. This goal encourages efforts to combat and fight climate change, which will affect our future quality of life. Finally, another important goal to me is peace and justice-strong institutions. This goal emphasizes the need for inclusive, accountable, and transparent institutions, as well as access to justice. Science and technology can play a significant role in accelerating democracy, even in high conflict zones, by promoting transparency, access to data, participation, and positive governance. Scientific methods, data analytics, and technology can be applied to the understanding and addressing of root causes for conflict. It can also facilitate peace building and lay the foundation for democratic governance. Scientific fields such as psychology and sociology contribute to human behavior, conflict dynamics, and peace-building strategies and understanding them. Organizations such as the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project utilize data analytics to predict and prevent conflict, preserving peace and justice. Another way this can be done is through conflict prevention AI. I know we've been speaking a lot about AI today as it's become a big source of conversation in 2023, and it can also be helpful by using scientific research and technology to develop early warning systems that monitor and predict potential sources of conflict, such as resource scarcity, climate change, or political instability. Social media for advocacy and crisis communication can also help achieve Global Goal 16. Social media platforms provide a space for civil society organizations and activists to mobilize support and advocate for democratic policies. Advances in communication technology can help coordinate conflict response and share critical information in high conflict zones. We've seen examples of this over the past few years, ensuring that aid is provided to people who need it most in countries such as Egypt, Ukraine, and sadly in the past few weeks, Israel and Gaza. While Global Goal 16 does not exclusively or solely focus on conflict prevention, when combined with other global goals, it provides a framework for addressing many underlying causes of conflict. And by using science and technology within context of innovative solutions, it can contribute to a more peaceful and sustainable world.
Thank you. All three of you have clearly put a lot of thought into this. And we have to remember they have a day job as students. They're also athletes and involved in several other activities. So I just want to take a moment and thank you for putting really just some thoughtfulness into why this matters to you. Because as much as we say it's not in the mainstream, for every person you touch and every person that you connect with and talk to, they're learning from you. So we can be what we can see based on what you're sharing today. So I want to thank you for that. Sheryl, I'm going to come to you now and talk to you a little bit about understanding your core values, especially as we're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and how we make a difference in the next generation. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you on that.
Okay, thanks so much. Well, two of the core values that I and my company have is full presence. I think in this age of distractibility, what we've been talking about is that's incredibly important because as human beings, we have a human drive to feel heard, valued, and seen. And so full presence. And also core values is boundaries. I think boundaries have, I first initially with the pandemic thought that would, we'd have more time, but it's really blurred our boundaries. So for myself, my company, my clients, and my team, we've been very strict with boundaries, and also it helps create greater productivity, greater profitability, and sustainability. So it would be full presence and boundaries.
Thank you. Terry, 2023 has been a big year for AI. Talk to us a little bit about what it means for education. And again, as we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, how do we infuse technology and the knowledge of scarcity, like we heard earlier today, to the next generation of leaders?
Sure. I'm kind of blown away by the three of you. I'm just sitting there, what was I doing at your age? I was probably praying that Manchester United were going to recruit me, running around a room somewhere. I certainly wasn't sitting in front of millions of people listening to your story, which is amazing. So congrats to the three of you. The education goals, when somebody talks about quality education, I think it's really important to define what does that mean? Like quality education, is it great content? Is it great, in learning environments? Is it a great educator? In truth, it's all of it, right? And what we're trying to figure out, particularly from a technology perspective, is how do we really take some of those big dials that you can turn and try to make incremental, additive improvements to be able to help an educator in the classroom. At least that's where my heart is at. There is no better driver of learning outcomes than a good educator. And I don't care what ChatGPT says. Because the opportunity to augment a great educator is probably why I'm more excited than I have been in my time in education. The opportunity to be able to say, this is where the student is struggling. This is where your class is struggling. These are the resources that are working. This is what's not working. Taking away that, do you know, to develop a running record for a kid, right, or a classroom or a school, can take days and weeks. You can do it in 5 minutes now, right? So taking all the time back and say, let me remind you why you became an educator in the first place. Let me show you how you can really engage. What you thought you could do before you came into the profession, then you realize, I have this burden from a learning perspective or a teaching perspective, I can't really impact in the way that I want. And that's why teachers are leaving, right? It's not that they're not there for the money. So the opportunity from a technology perspective is incredible because even 15 years ago, we talked about the world is more mobile. The world is more social, so we can look at best practice. We can share resources between not just students, but educators. We can curate content. Much of the content that's used in the modern day classroom doesn't come from an education publisher. It comes from all different sources. And we can personalize on the back of probably assessment data. And that's the area that's probably least developed, I would argue. But now with ChatGPT, we have this opportunity, or AI, let me start saying ChatGPT. We have an opportunity not just curate, but create content. So creating content on the fly based on the needs of an individual student, that is not just one of the biggest problems in education. That's one of the world's biggest problems. That is Bloom's 2 Sigma. That is the opportunity to say, I can see where you're struggling, and give you agency, an opportunity to say, what would I like to learn? How would I like to learn? What do I want to learn? And to be able to generate on the fly. And, you know, I work in the early learning space a lot, and you have an opportunity to say to a full classroom of 30 kids, let's take this story, Jack and the Beanstalk, let's put it at the reading level of every single one of those kids. Give me an assessment so they can check for understanding or comprehension. Give me all that data back. Oh, there's 4 children over here that have got parents. You know, some of our districts in the US have like 70 different languages. We have an opportunity to say, translate that so they can enjoy that reading experience with their families at home. On the fly. It's incredible in terms of the opportunity. So the creation angle that we haven't really had before, plus the curation, the opportunity to align, is giving us tremendous opportunities that we haven't had in an industrial education system where you get one educator and all of you need to listen to me. I'm the sage on the stage. I cannot be the guide on the side to facilitate learning. So I'm just so excited about this as an opportunity, but the problem, to bring us back down a little bit, I can't access any of that if I don't have access to the internet or the device or whatever I need to get the content. If I'm still in an environment, and if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, half of the schools there don't have access to electricity, running water, and computers and internet. That's a huge problem. So when we talk about a shortfall of budget of $94 billion, it is much more than that. The US spends $1.2 trillion, right? It's not a money problem. It's the fact that we haven't prioritized what needs to happen in these countries in a quicker way to be able to make impact. Sorry, I'm running over.
That's okay, Terry. This is fantastic. This is chock full of content today, and my brain is full. We each have a little less than a minute, okay? So we're going to do some speed speaking here. We'll start with you, Terry, and work our way down. If you had one goal, one thing, one call to action for the youth today, what would you tell them? For the students, one call to action for people in power, what would it be?
I would divide it into 2. I would only join an organization after I left college that was committed to coaching. Very important. The second thing is, think about your value. Think about the intrinsic value you can get from the environment that you want to work in. Everything will follow on from that, but just think about your impact.
Wonderful. That's a good one. Sheryl.
So I'm fully committed and all in to Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is equality for women. And I want to say especially women who are further marginalized within our gender, because it's impossible to lump everybody all in together. The condition's very different. And my call to action would be to, if I can help in any way, help you scale in your companies or your universities for your incoming female leaders, that to help with the attrition rate, to help with their confidence, and to help them have FBI-like strategic-based influence so they can have an even greater impact, then please do reach out to me. I'm glad to help any way I can.
Wonderful. Okay, let's go.
I would have leaders create meaningful, sustainable change that requires both vision and action. Leaders' decisions and action can create either meaningful, sustainable change for the betterment of society and the planet, or destroy future generations' ability to carry on the same objective. As your successor, I strongly urge you to prioritize the following principles. Keep a long-term vision, create inclusivity, embrace sustainability, collaborate, drive innovation, lead by example, and engage the next generation. The legacy you leave will be measured by the positive and sustainable changes you make, or those you choose to avoid. Our future depends on your leadership and the decisions you make today. It is up to all of us to create a better world for the future.
Ella, thank you.
My call to action is to make evidence-based decisions by basing policies and actions on credible scientific research, and to prioritize education and awareness and recognize the transformative power of education in creating a sustainable change for the world. Your contribution is imperative to help achieve the 17 UN SDGs.
Thank you, Ella. George.
My one call to action would be to ask the leaders to focus on providing solutions to problems and to bring people together instead of apart, like we
Fantastic.
are here today.
I want to thank this panel, but before we end, I'd like to invite one final youth, and we're going to put him on the spot a little bit here today, but he's one of the youngest individuals here at the event, and in total fairness, I want to give him the chance to also provide his perspective, because we've actually activated him today. He's gotten really excited about what we've been talking about. So I am actually going to ask Solomon to come up and share one final call to action for the people in power. Come on up.
My one call to action is to change climate, like to help our generation with climate change, whether it be carpooling or anything, just keep consistent so that for our generation it'll be much easier to help and to change climate change so we can have a better and easier way to help our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noah. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you, everyone, for your time.